What is up, guys? Ashton here, and we are back for another video. Today we are going to be ranking every tier 9 tank in World of Tanks PC. And we sound alright on YouTube, so let's get it started. Alright, so as you can tell, we are ranking everything in a tier list, every tier 9. This is based off of tanks.gg and also based off my very own opinion, so if you don't agree with my opinion, oh well, tough. But I'll answer your comments if you disagree. Just be kind about it, you know. Anyways, so let me. I forgot to do this in the tier 10, but we're gonna tell you what each tier means because I forgot to do that before I started. So anyways, so first up we have the OP/broken tanks. You probably know what that means. Overpowered or broken tanks. These are the tanks that are just absolutely busted, that need nerfs or just make the game not enjoyable. And then we have strong tanks. These are the tanks that just perform really well. They're not broken in any way. They're good where they're at, and they're just all around fun tanks. Now good tanks, these are just, you know, the good tanks. They got good stuff going for them, but you know, they don't have anything too special about them, but enough to make them a decent choice. So balance, literally what it means. It's literally your average Joe tank that is pretty good, but then it has its bad factors to it. Meh. These are the ones that, you know, they have a couple good things going for them, but in all, they're really not the best tanks, and you have a whole lot of other choices to play besides these. Sucky means that they're downright bad to play, and really you won't find fun playing in them. But there's just one key factor about these tanks that just keeps them back from the garbage tier. Now, the garbage tier is what it means. This is reserved for artillery, and every tank that is just can't perform its duty in battle and just suffers from it and needs buffs. So like I said, garbage is for artillery, and that's exactly where they go, because in the latest update with the HE nerfs, it completely ruined artillery, and artillery is just trash. It makes the game unenjoyable. So here we go. All our artillery goes in there. Alright, so first tank that we're going to start off with is the AMX-31 prototype. This tank, it's a little bit better, in my opinion, than the AMX-30B, just because it's at tier 9. It has a little bit more armor going for it, and it's got a better gun, in my opinion. But the stock grind for it is just absolutely terrible, so I'm just going to keep this in sucky because we know where the AMX-30B was. And if you haven't watched the tier 10 videos or any other videos that come out before, so say I'm doing tier 9 like I am today, go watch the tier 10. I'm doing tier 8 soon, go watch tier 9, tier 10 before you watch that. Just make sure you watch it in sequential order, that way you understand what's going on. You don't have to do that, but it'd be nice if you guys did. That would I'd really appreciate it, especially for my channel. Alright, next up we have the Batanogle Chatillon 25 TAP. This tank is literally the tier 9 version of the tier 10, just at tier 9. But although I don't find it as good as the tier 10, I say it performs tier for tier at tier 9. But the stock grind is really tragic playing for this. But other than that, it's still a really fun tank with that 6. I think it's got 6 shells at the tier 10. Yeah, it's got 6 shells at the top gun, 1800 potential damage. It's just really an overall great tank to play. Next up, we have the Centurion 7-1. This tank, oh, I love this tank. This is a joy to play. It is much better than the Action X and the FB4202. This tank is going to go straight up into strong. It's not overpowered, yes, like a Chieftain or a Super Conch. But it's just your good old British medium at tier 9. This thing has a great gun. You have a choice between a 20-pounder or a 105. I'd go with the 105 all day long, but the 20-pounder is still not a bad choice just because of its DPM. But this tank has APCR as its standard with 268 standard pen. That is incredible for tier 9, a medium. And then it also has 210 millimeters of HESH, and you have just regular old premium HE rounds. Not, excuse me, not premium HE, just high penetrating HE rounds. And it's pretty mobile for how big it is. It's got a great turret. Its hull armor's, it's a Centurion. It's not gonna have the best hull armor, but this thing uses its 10 degrees of gun depression really nicely. Even though it's got those really weak turret cheeks, if you do angle this thing correctly, you can sometimes bounce off this because it's pretty angled on this. There's like little ridges and humps up the side of the turret cheeks, so it just really makes this a great tank. It's got 0.31 dispersion, which is amazing. 1,000 horsepower, making it really mobile. Great health at 1,720, as well as its view range and its traverse. It's an overall great tank, and I really love this tank. All right, next we have the Chair Furniture, or the Char Future 4. This tank is basically a Bat Chat, but just weirdified. It's got, oops, there we go. It's got a pretty dang good gun. I believe it is pretty much similar to the Tier 10 Bat Chat's gun, just subtracting one shell. But it also keeps the same exact loading time. It's really mobile, but this thing has a weird, janky hitbox. I mean, look at this thing. It is a weird monstrosity. It looks like this back almost looks like an Urukai helmet or a giant squid's head. But it's got great gun depression for how low the ground it is at 7.5 degrees. You can just see how that thing performs. Not that it has any armor whatsoever, but you can sometimes, if you get some troll bounces off this upper plate, if you're angling and the enemies shoot weird shots at you. But it has great pen at 264, and it's got 330 with the heat rounds, which is absolutely great. Great top speed. Pretty dang good health as well for an autoloader at 1750. It doesn't have the best view range at 380, but really that really doesn't care. This tank really doesn't care. You can just put some modifications on it or something like that, and you're good. 2.33 accuracy is pretty good for this tank. So I'm gonna keep this tank. I'm gonna put this thing right pretty much next to the 25T AP. Yeah. Next up, we have the Cobra. Now this tank, everyone knows where this thing goes. It's going straight up in the broken. Ever since this thing came out, it's been broken. You got a 4-shot autoloader with a 120 millimeter gun. Its standard rounds are heat rounds, and you can load all Hesh in this thing with 210, which is only 50 millimeters off, but that's still a ton of Hesh pen. And even with HE, you have 120 millimeters of pen, which is crazy. And then the turret on this thing is absolutely, it's like almost like a Emil 1 turret. It's that good. It's not the fastest tank, but it doesn't really care. It plays more like a autoloading heavy than anything. It's got pretty decent accuracy for how big the gun is, and great shell velocity, believe it or not, for a Hesh round at over 1100. While the heat rounds only have 793. But it's got poor view range for a medium at only 370, but just easily slap a modification or equipment on this thing and you're good to go. But then look at the armor on this thing. Look at that armor. It doesn't look impressive, but when you look at the angles, it's pretty all right. But that's because you're penning with heat. That's because this is heat. But watch when you use the 10 degrees of gun depression on this thing. It literally looks like an Emil when you're using the gun depression. I mean, look at that. It's crazy to think that this thing is in the game. I mean, potential damage with heat, you're already at 1440. Once you load Hesh, you're doing almost 2,000 an entire clip in, what is it? How many? 4.5 seconds. You're doing 2,000 damage. And then you just reload for 47 seconds, which is not bad for a 120 millimeter gun on a medium. So, yeah, this thing is broken. Next up, we have the CS59. This is the Tier 9 Polish turbocharged medium thingy. It's basically got the same exact gun as the Tier 10. Believe it or not, it has some decent armor compared to the Tier 10, because the Tier 10 really doesn't have that much turret armor going for it. But this tank has some weird trolley angles on it. I mean, it's pretty much got the same exact armor in all my opinion, but by how more well-rounded this tank is on the turret, you see how rounded it is. You can get some trollier bounces off this. Top speed on this thing, I believe, is also 70. Or is the tier 10 the only one that has the boost mechanic? I thought this thing had the boost mechanic as well. Guess it doesn't. Maybe it is only to the tier 10. But either way, it's still basically the exact same thing as the tier 10, just a tier 9.36 accuracy, 390 view range. Yeah, so it's literally the same thing as the tier 10. But I'm going to put this in good, actually, because it doesn't have the boost mechanic. And then, because I believe I put the CS59 or 63 in the strong category. So I'll put it just below. Next up, we have the E50. Oh, I hate the E50. It's one of the hardest stock grinds at tier 9 because you legit have you can have a 75 millimeter gun stock. I mean, look at this. Look at that. You use this thing stock, you have no chance at surviving in the world. I mean, look at this thing. It's literally like a oversized panther. And look, you only have 150 pen at tier 9, which is very, very poor. I mean, yeah, you can do a little bit at tier 7, maybe a little bit at tier 8, but you're absolutely going to do nothing until you start upgrading the gun. But still, this one, that one's not great either. It's once you get to the L100, 88 is where you actually start getting somewhere, and then you do, however, get that 105 millimeter with 390 alpha, but its penetration is really lacking at only 230 and 270 on the premium. Yeah, it's fast. It's got a ton of armor though for a medium. It's the second biggest medium in the game besides the E50. But unlike its big brother, this thing, it doesn't have as much turret armor, so you can pen right through it. And then also this upper plate is not a guaranteed ricochet sometimes. So in all honesty, the E50 sucky. I'm sorry. I know, hate me for all you want, but it really is what it is. The K91-2, this is a recent addition to the game. This is literally the K91 in Blitz, which I always call it the K91 version 2 in Blitz because that's exactly what it is. Just with the stupid autoloader that's broken in Blitz. But this thing does not have an autoloader. This thing actually has APCR as its standing around at 248 pen and 300 on the premium, which is absolutely great. 2600 DPM at tier 9 is also great. It's got a quick top speed for a Russian medium. It's got 6 degrees of gun depression, which is pretty unique for a Russian medium as well. And its turret armor is actually pretty decent. All you gotta do is hide those little Mickey Mouse ears up there. And then you really got to watch out because people will love to pen the Mickey Mouse ears even if you are hold down. But if they accidentally hit, say, that little rim on your turret, they'll obviously bounce off. But you also got to watch this front plate because that is a really, really weak spot on your tank. You also you have decent view range for a Russian tank as well at 390. Not the greatest health at 1500, but you can make do with it. And then its shell velocity is also great at 1450. But I love playing this tank on console right now. I got it recently from the Arnie event, but I'm going to put this in a good tank as well. Next up, we had the Camp Panzer 50T. Boy, this is a joy of a tank to play. This thing is one of the best performing mediums in the game. Even though it's got some of the weirdest stats, let's just say. This thing is a monster tank. It is absolutely huge. But it's pretty lightweight and quick for its size. 8 degrees of gun depression for a German medium, really good gun depression. And then look at that. You have to really aim your shots precisely in order to pen this thing if this thing's hold down. And then even still, you're having a hard time to pen this thing. It's got great rounds. It's got 268 millimeters of pen and then 310 on the heat, which is great. Just not the greatest DPM, but you easily can get that up with, say, rammer or improved modules and stuff. Got .32 accuracy, 1750 health, which is some of the most for a medium at tier 9. It goes 60. It's pretty mobile, actually. Believe it or not, it's got great view range. This thing is just a joy to play. This thing's going straight up into Strong. Not quite broken, though. Next up, we have the Kunzenpanzer. This is the Siege Mode Medium. This thing is a funny little thing, let me tell you. Because sometimes I hate it, and sometimes I don't, because it can do very unique things, let me just say. Because already you have 10 degrees of gun depression on this thing, which is pretty good. But once you put this thing in siege mode, you have about, I believe you have 15, or even 15 or 16, something around there. I think it's 16 degrees. 15, whatever. It's got a lot of gun depression, but look at that. What a silly tank. It's got a really great 105 gun on it. It's actually better than the Camp Panzer, better than the Camp Panzer's DPM. But this thing performs much more like a light than anything, because it goes 65. It's got really good traverse. But the only thing that really is lacking for it is that it has 0.4 accuracy. That is terrible accuracy. And as well as only a 1600 health. Basically no armor, but other than that, it's a great tank. So I'm going to put this thing in good. Alright, next we have the Leopard PTA. Yeah, sorry. It has no armor. Terrible DPM on it. Like, absolutely terrible DPM. 2400, and then even with this stock grind on it's absolutely terrible, because you only have 218 pen, and then but you do get they did buff the alpha. It's got 420 alpha now, and it's got 278 pen because it has APCR, and then it has premium APCR as well with 323 pen, and then it's also got a HE with 105, which they probably did just put that on there, because I do not remember this thing ever having 105 millimeters of HE pen. It's got decent accuracy. It's pretty quick. Got decent health, but it's just this tank. Look at this armor. I mean, look at this. Even if you're hold down this thing, no, you're penning this thing no matter what. And you even can HE the front, because it's only 50 millimeters thick in the front. This thing's an HE-able monster. So this thing, just bye. Now we are at the M46 Patton. The Patton, this is a hit or miss tank for me. I hate it stock. Like, most tier 9 tanks stock are really just terrible to play, and especially when you're going up against tier 10s, it just really suffers. But once you get this 105 millimeter gun on it, man, this thing's a world of joy to play. You got one of the best guns at tier 9 with that. You also have a pretty trolly turret. I mean, look how checkery that is. Especially when you're using this 10 degrees of gun depression. This thing's got a pretty stinky turret. It's a little stinker, let me just say. But as you can tell, it's got no hull armor whatsoever. You can pen right through that, but this thing's hold down is really good. It's not the most mobile medium, but it's got absolutely great DPM at almost 3,000. 218 on the regular shells, 265, which is very low pen, but if you do actually get this thing going, it'll do lovely things for you in battle. 0.37 accuracy is also not great, but the funny thing is on this thing is you actually stock, you have literally basically the same gun as like a Jackson or something, and then you also, believe it or not, can mount the derp gun on this thing. You can mount the Sherman derp gun, which is also one of the funniest things to see in top tier, because you could just derp people and pepper them with this thing. Well, not really as much anymore because HE nerfs, but you still can annoy people with this gun by just hitting them like, what the heck was that hit me? So this thing, I'm going to put it in balanced. I don't find it, any good, but I also don't find this tank any particularly bad situations. Now let me just get this thing. Ugh, my the lag on this browser is really sucking at the moment, so give me one sec. Okay, excellent. Now let me get this chart back in here. Let me actually point my screen so you actually can see my face here almost entirely. Okay, come on, line it up. Why? This is annoying me. Okay, whatever. We're going to leave it right there. We're going to leave it right there. All right, next up, we have the Object 283. This is a recently introduced tank from the Holiday Ops this year, or last year, December. But this tank is it was so hard to get. I got only a couple day trial in it, but you can technically get this permanently if you get super duper lucky and have like infinite days or battles in it. So, but this tank, it's one of those strange Russian mediums. It's almost looks like an Object 705 by just looking at it, or even a 780 just backwards. But this armor is very, very interesting for a Russian tank. It's very curved. It looks almost American if you look at it. But that gun is absolutely fun to use. I love the gun. Even though it's got 2300 DPM, but I just love it so much because of the shell velocity on the APCR. Actually, wow, I thought the shell velocity was better than that. It feels like it in game. Guess it's not, but you still got 226 pen, 300 on the premium. Not the greatest, but not the worst either. It's pretty mobile for how long this thing is. It's got 1600 health, decent gun depression for a Russian medium. It's pretty mobile on the turn rate, 0.36 accuracy, but the armor is where it's at on this thing. If you're pointing straight at your tank, at your enemies, you got this weird, front plate like a Patton almost, where you can pen straight through it, or any of those curved upper plates on American mediums. But if you hide your upper plate like behind debris, because I know I played this tank on Berlin and stuff, and it just gives me a world of yums. I don't know what that means, but we'll go with it. But this thing is fun to use, especially like tilted like this way, because you have that crazy. You can actually side scrape in this tank, believe it or not, if you try enough. If you try hard enough, you can actually side scrape. But look at this. Hold on here, if I can do it perfectly. Yeah, there we go. I mean, you sort of could side scrape with the back here. You're hiding your gun around here, and then you got some spaced armor actually over here, so you can sort of side scrape. But I find this tank is pretty dang good, especially when Awesome Epic guys played it. It was pretty fun to watch because this tank was doing so well. So I'm going to put this in good. I'm not going to put it in strong because I don't think it's that good, but it's really fun to play in battle. Next up, we have the Object 430. Now the 430, this is a tough one. The 430 is the Tier 9 Russian tech tree tank. Actually, yeah, it's a tech tree still. But this is basically the 430B, just a Tier 9. You got no armor on this tank whatsoever. Legit no armor in the front, unlike your counterpart of the 430U. So this thing's gun is not the greatest, nor is really anything great about it. It's literally the 430U at Tier 9 and just no hull armor whatsoever. It's nothing special. It's your just average Joe Russian medium tank, let's just say. So I really don't have anything to say about this, so I'm going to put it at balanced. All right. Next up, we have the 430 version 2. Here we go. This tank, I have a very love-hate relationship with this tank because it's one of those rear turreted, half turreted tanks, medium tanks. It's only got 4 degrees of gun depression, which makes this tank very terrible at sniping over ridges. It has terrible armor, especially with the turret, because you have those 2 little Mickey Mouse ears of cupolas. I don't know why I'm saying Mickey Mouse ears so much, but I am. It's got the D54U, or you have a choice between 2 guns like the T54. I recommend the one with actually they're both tier 9 guns, but one has better DPM. Actually, no. Screw whatever I'm saying. It's not true. This gun's better. Mark that down. Yeah, this thing's got 246 pen, 330, which is not bad for pen. Its accuracy's all right. Its mobility's all right. But just like its tier 10 K91 buddy, this thing is just, It can do good games, but it's just because of the fact it's rear turreted, has no armor, and it's just really poor. I'm going to put it in sucky as well. Alright, next up we have the Object 590. This is basically a Progetto Russian tank. I'm not kidding. It's literally a Progetto. It's got terrible DPM, though, if you look at it. Because this thing's only got 320 alpha. It's got the 3 intraclips 4.3, but look at those values. It's basically actually like a IS-3 auto, where you get faster and faster reload after you fire a lot more. So it's basically, yeah, literally, it looks like a Russian Progetto. I'm not kidding. Look at this thing. It literally looks like a Russian Progetto. That's literally all it is. It's got pretty decent armor, believe it or not. It's got 5 degrees of gun depression, but you really can't go hold down with it. But if you are hold down, there's only these 2 little, like, dimples right here underneath your cheek where they actually could pen you. And then these, the cupolas on this thing actually have very interesting hitboxes. But if you are facing head on to a tank, you got to watch out, because tucked underneath this turret, you actually have these little weak spots right here that people can pen right through. But it's pretty mobile. It's got pretty decent health. Not the greatest view range, not the greatest accuracy. I'm gonna put this thing in. I'm gonna put it in meh. But actually, no, we're gonna put it in balanced. It's not bad. It's just another average medium. If it can actually let me put it in balanced. Okay, next up we have the Standard B. This is literally one of my favorite tier 9s to play. The only thing, it's literally the Leopard PTA, just so much better because it has an auto reloader gun. Yeah, it might not look like it has good stats, but trust me, it's great. You got APCR with 268 pen, and also you got that lovely HE rounds. You got 1,080 in 6 seconds worth of damage, and also you could load this silly. Actually, on Blitz it's not an auto. It's an auto loader, not an auto reloader. But yeah, you can do a lovely job in this tank. It's got 0.35 accuracy, really mobile at 65 kilometers an hour, not too bad. A view range of 390. The only thing that's wrong with this and keeping it from broken is the fact that it has no armor whatsoever. I mean, look at this. Even if you're hold down, nothing. Watch this. I can just, HE? Look at that. Just pen straight through this thing with HE. And for that matter, the only reason why it will not go into broken is just because you have no armor. So, Standard B, you're going in strong. Next up, we have... No, you're not going in broken. Naughty Standard B. Alright, next up we have the Skoda T50. This thing, in my opinion, I feel like this tank is a little bit better than its tier 10 buddy, the TVP. That's just because it has a little bit more armor than its tier 10 buddy, and the fact that you have a little bit of a pike nose, believe it or not, on the front, which has a little bit of spaced armor actually, right here with those tracks on it. But you see, it's got literally the same exact gun, just without subtract 1 shell. You got 248 pen, 310 on the premium. It's got pretty decent DPM for its reload. It goes 50. It's got not the greatest health, but it's got decent accuracy, decent view range. It's not a very hard grind. Even though this gun right here is not the greatest, but it's really a really fun tank to play when you get the hang of it. So I'm going to put this thing in good. Excellent. Okay, next up we have, what is that? Ooh, what is that? Ooh, hold up. Ah, the T55A. Oh, this one, the T55A. This is a really hard one because I love it, but then I don't. I'm gonna put it in meh. It's literally we're gonna talk about the T54 real quick here, just a sec. But let's just look at the T55 stats. It's got all right DPM. It's got not the greatest pen at 221, but its heat rounds are 330, which is actually really nice. Top speed of 50, pretty decent accuracy. Ooh, excuse me. But other than that, it's nothing too special. It's your average Joe Russian. It's German, but it's your average Joe Russian medium. But that can go a little bit hold down. Do nothing about it. This thing is going to also go into balanced. Next up, we have the T54. The T54, actually, oops, that was the T54. My bad. That's T50. Wait. Hold up. Whatever, you guys know what I was talking about. Actually, hold up. That is the T54 right here. Now, let me get the T55A. I know these are small images, but actually, you know what? I can make them bigger. Hold up here. There you go. A little bit bigger so you can see. All right, yeah. T55A goes there. And here's T54. All right, T54. It is a little bit better than T55. You know, your average Joe Russian heavy or medium. It's got you have two choices of guns. You can go for more pen, less DPM, or you can also go for higher DPM but less pen. My opinion is go for the higher pen because really it doesn't really affect your DPM a whole lot, just 400 off. But I would rather take this more pen just because I like to have that feeling that I know I can pen my target rather than struggling. We got 56 kilometers an hour top speed. Decent, great turret actually. You have 1650 health, 1000 shell velocity. Put this thing hold down. Put this thing hold down, you're golden. So this thing, in my opinion, it is one of the better mediums at tier 9. So I'm going to put it in strong because you can do wonderful things. Actually, you know what? Oh, yeah, we're going to put it in strong. Okay. The Type 61. Yeah, Type 61 is absolutely painful. First, you have to go through the STA1. Absolutely a terrible, terrible grind. This thing has no armor, no pen, nothing going for it. It's besides a little bit of DPM. This thing is just terrible compared to the STB. It's super slow for a medium. Of its stature, at least, like of its, yeah, it's got 1750 health, not bad, but it's just terrible, terrible tank. Look at this. Look at this. Even you have gun depression. It's terrible tank. 0.36 accuracy, absolutely awful. So we're gonna keep that there. Next up, we had the Udace Alt 3. This is the reward vehicle, I believe. This tank is literally looks like it has the tier 6 Stridsvang turret, just a tier 9 and bigified. This thing is also siege mode in it. You can go siege mode in this thing, which makes it very funny. You got 13 degrees of gun depression when we're in siege mode. But this thing, unlike the Udace, like the regular tech tree version, this thing has that turret that's not sloped. So if it did have that sloped turret, then it would be a very nice tank. But just because that, we're going to talk about the Udace 1516, I believe it is. Just Uday 16. This tank, it has literally exact same thing, except it is a cheese wedge, and you have just about the same exact gun depression, 12 degrees, but you got a much better gun. You got a 105 with more pen. You got more DP. You got a little. I think you have the same, basically the same DPM. You're a little bit slower than the alt, but the really only thing that makes this thing a whole heck of a lot better is this whole armor. I mean, look at this. You cannot pen it. It's a cheese wedge. If you even hit it, say you hit it down here, just scrapes off, bounces up into the turret. And this thing actually, unlike the tier 10, this thing does not have cupolas, believe it or not. And the only place you really can hit on this thing that's weak is this somewhat of a cupola, and then this weak spot up here by the gun breech, where it ejects the rounds. But other than that, this thing is one of the better. I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna put in good, but the Uday 16 is going straight into broken. Next up, we have our final medium for the night. It is the WZ-120. Now, this thing, it's better than the T-54 in my opinion, because it's got a 120 millimeter gun. It's got much better pen. I think it's got pretty much almost the same DPM as the Tier 10, believe it or not. I'm going to put this actually at the top of the Strunk, because you got better DPM than the T-54. You got a better turret, believe it or not. You're faster. You got better accuracy. This thing is just so much better than T-54. It's literally better in every aspect than it. But I'm not going to put it in broken. Next, for our first heavy, we have the 50 TP. The 50 toilet paper, as we call it. But this thing, it's got a big old 130 millimeter gun. I love that thing. I think it's got 560 alpha, which is really nice. I love that. But its DPM is terrible because it's got 15-second reload time, but pretty much given why, because of how big the gun is. And then it's got 0.38 accuracy. One sec, gotta stretch. It's not the fastest thing because it's so low to the ground and has terrible horsepower. You got 2,000 health, which is really good for a tier 9. But the only thing that's wrong with this is its cupolas and its driver's hatch, because you can pen straight through that. But if you are hold down, you actually have pretty much all domination over the battlefield, because this thing, like I said, has some of the best armor for tier 9 heavy, besides those cupolas. But once you go hold down, you are hiding those, and it's got really good view range for a tier 9 heavy, so this thing is going straight up into strong. Next tank, we have the AE Phase 1, the Moon Rover looking thing, with 4 different sets of tracks like the 709E. This thing, it's an interesting character, let's just say that. It's got terrible DPM, pretty decent pen. Sorry, I gotta lean back, I'm a little uncomfortable right now. You got 1800 health with this thing, 35 knot top speed, pretty good accuracy, and especially on the move for a tier 9 heavy. Just the only thing I'm really not going for is its whole armor, because when you're facing hold down, you have this big old weak spot, because people can just aim right there. People usually aim up here because they think that's where the weakest armor is, but really it's actually down here on this tank. As well as using its 10 degrees of gun depression this thing has. It's pretty dang nice, but you have these weird turret cheek dimples again that you can pen easily. But this thing is also going to go straight up into strong. Next we have the AMX 5120. This thing's going to go into meh. It's got a pike nose for Frenchie. It's got a 4-shot autoloader like the tier 10. I think it's the same exact gun, just 2100 DPM. You could do 1600 damage in 10 seconds. It's really quick at 65. Not the best health. Even some mediums have more health than this thing. This thing also plays more like a medium than it does a heavy, which is why it's a medium on console. But as you can tell, it has no armor, not even when you're hold down. But that's why it's going into meh. But just because of the gun and the fact that it's kind of fun to play, but it's also not, it's going to go into meh. Next up, we have the AMX M451. This thing is literally just the tier 10 at tier 9, and it's going up into broken because this is it's legit the tier 10 at tier 9, just without the 130 gun. It does have the one. It's got the 127 gun rather than a 130 at tier 10. But it's got 470 alpha, which is really great. Not terrible DPM given the gun size. It's alright on mobility. It's got pretty decent health. This thing's a heavy tank. It's got premium AP rounds, which is really cool. It's got really good gun depression. But I mean, just look at the armor on this thing. It literally has the tier 10 armor at tier 9, like I said. And look, go hold down this thing. No one's gonna pen you. Even if you're trying to shoot under here, the tracks are so big that you'll generally not hit them. Yeah, you have those cupolas, but that's really not anything to worry about, and especially in this tank. So it's going straight up into broken. Next up, we have the... this is a new tank. This is the BZ 58-2. Not to be mistaken with the rocket tanks. This is actually different than the rocket tanks. Believe it or not, this thing looks exactly like the 50 TP. And it basically plays like the 50 TP, just it's got a little bit less damage, but it has a little bit more pen. It's got literally the same exact stats as the 50 TP, and that is exactly why it is going to go into Shrunk as well. I don't think it's in the game yet, though. Next up, we actually have the true BZ 68. This is a new rocket-propelled boosting tank heavy thingy, whatever you want to call it. This thing's got a big old 130 gun on it. You don't have to worry about upgrading the gun because you'll have it stock. He's got 248 pen. It's got not the greatest DPM or accuracy. It is not a fast tank, but once you put those rocket boosters on, you're zooming, and you have 5 uses, unlike the tier 10 where you have 6. So you get 1 every tier. But this thing has up to 50 seconds of rocket boosting, which gives it up to 1925 horsepower, which is hilarious. It's not the most mobile, like I said, not the greatest health, but I feel like this thing can do stuff, but I'm going to put it in meh. And not going to stretch it out, though, either. All right. The Concept 1B. Straight up into broken. This tank is a hold-down meta machine. This thing has no weak spots on it when you're hold down. That is not the Concept. That is the Concept. Excellent. Okay. I mean, look at this thing. You're literally a totem pole. Your thing is a little totem pole of a turret, and you cannot pen it. Like, you aim at anything on this tank, even if you are hold down, that cupola you barely can hit. It's barely even a weak spot. Once you go hold down this thing using your 10 degrees of gun depression, I mean, look at that. What is that? And look, your turret's literally, there's no cheeks on it. Cheeks are so hard to hit, and they're so strong that you can't pen it. And not to mention, there's no side of the turret. And then it's like a pyramid shape. So all rounds are just going to go bounce off every direction on this tank, sometimes even if you're on flat ground. So and it's got APCRs or standard round, some of the highest shell velocity in the game. It's got heat rounds, 310 pen. It's got really good HE rounds sometimes. They can be fun. It's pretty mobile. It's got 1800 health, not the greatest, but not the worst. But yeah, this thing is just broken. Next up, we have the Conqueror. Conqueror's also going to go up in the broken because you're literally playing the Super Conqueror at tier 9. Because you also have the same exact turret armor as the Super Conq. I mean, look at that. Impenetrable. You have the same gun, same armor basically. At tier 9, same DPM, just actually a little bit worse DPM, believe it or not, but does that really matter to this tank? No, it doesn't give a care. It's also got 326 and then 120 on the HE pen, which is so fun to use. It's not fast, but it's not slow. It's got great health, great view range, great accuracy, especially on the move. This thing's broken. E75, also going into broken. We have a streak of 3 broken tanks in a row. E75, yes, the stock grind is absolutely terrible because look at this. You only have, watch this. You only have literally you have the Tiger II's gun at tier 9, but once you get the 128 millimeter gun, this is the best tier 9 all around in my opinion. Got the best armor in my opinion. It's really mobile for being almost 100 tons at 40 kilometers an hour. It's got 530 alpha, 246 pen, 311 on the APCR. Great accuracy for a 128 millimeter gun. It's got 8 degrees of gun depression, 400 view range. It is absolutely fun to play this thing and just ruin your enemy's days. And you can, even if you're like a noob, this thing is a noob friendly tank. I mean, look at that. Even the Cupola, it's very small and you can't really hit it. This thing hold down is a beast because it's got 8 degrees of gun depression, and ramming in this tank. Oh, ramming is a joy, and especially if you put turbo on this thing, it can go up to almost 55 kilometers an hour. So this thing is broken. Continuing our trend for broken tanks, we have the Emil 2. The Emil 2 is literally the Kran Vong at tier 9. Is there really a need to explain? It's got APCR as its standard with 252 pen. You got literally the same gun as the Kran Vong, same exact armor. You cannot pen it. It's got 12 degrees of gun depression. I mean, look at that. You cannot pen it. Even if you try hitting those Cupolas, you can't. It's literally impossible. Emil 2, broken. Any need to explain the Chieftain prototype? It's literally the Chieftain except that tier 9. No need to explain. Yeah, we have a streak of 5 broken tanks in a row, believe it or not. Wow, incredible. The IS-32, this tank, is this going to continue our streak in broken? Yeah, there's no doubt this thing's continuing the streak in broken because it's got a double-barrel tank, got great pen, great everything. It's the ST2 except at tier 9. Yeah, literally what it is. Now we have the Lorraine 50-ton. This thing's also pretty interesting. This is pretty much the AMX M454, but it's on a Lorraine 40-ton chassis. You got no hull armor whatsoever. You can actually HE the hull armor if you wanted to sometimes in rare occasions. But that turret armor it's literally the AMX M454's turret. But it's got a 120 millimeter gun. It's really mobile for 60 kilometers an hour. Terrible health for a heavy at 1750. Terrible DPM. Great accuracy. This thing, I'm gonna put it in balanced. So that is where our streak ends. We had a streak of 6 broken tanks in a row at tier 9. Next we have the M6 Yo. The M6 Yo in this game is just meh. It's got really nothing good going for it, unlike in Blitz where it's absolutely cracked. It's got a very funny gun, 120 millimeter. It's got literally a British and American gun combined in one. It's got good gun depression, not gonna lie there. But its armor is also pretty good. But look at those. This is literally the definition of Mickey Mouse ears right here on this tank. Not mobile, but you also have that extra track mechanic here. Oops. You have 120 millimeter gun, 10 degrees gun depression. It's not great. It's, in all honesty, I'd play more like a Conqueror or something better than this thing. Next we have the M103. Also going to be going into math. The stock grind is terrible because you only have the T32 gun at tier 9, which is terrible with 218 pen. Quickie Baby played this thing the other day, and he was telling everything about it, how bad it was stock. Yeah, it might look like it has good DPM, but it really doesn't feel good until you get that top gun.
But this tank is pretty good once you get that top gun, but before then, you're really going to struggle in this tank. But it's got really good turret armor. But when you're playing the stock turret armor, I mean, look at this terrible, terrible stock turret. But once you get that upgraded turret and use that 8 degrees of gun depression, which is let's just say it's poor for an American tank, and then also your whole armor is not the greatest either. So yeah, this thing's also going to go into meh. Now, the Moishen, or the Moist Shen. This tank is going to go up into... this is literally a better mouse, in my opinion. Not kidding. It can do everything that the mouse does at tier 9 and do it better. Because you're at tier 9, because you can see tier 7s in this thing. Yeah, you got 240 on your cheeks, but that doesn't matter. It's the mouse. You're playing the mouse at tier 9. This thing has 2,300 hit points at tier 9, 0.36 accuracy. You go the same speed as the mouse. It's literally just, you're playing the mouse at tier 9. So I'm going to put it in strong, but no higher, because it's just not there. Now you have the Object 257. This thing, like I said on the tier 10 video with the 279 PA, this thing struggles a bit. It's got great armor. It's got really good armor, but you're literally just playing out IS-3 at tier 9 and tier 10, just with a little bit better gun with APCR rounds. And if you got 50 kilometers an hour, yeah, you're basically playing the IS-3 at tier 10, so it's gonna go into Shrunk as well. Next up we have the 705. Boy, this tank is so fun to play. It's also gonna go up into Strong, know it without a doubt. It's not overpowered, but like the 705A, but it's got a really good gun, 130 millimeter. It's the same gun as the IS-7. But 0.42 accuracy, not the greatest, but then again, it is a 130 millimeter gun. But this thing's armor is just a troll. Look at this thing. It's a beast. It is a beast of a tank, especially when you're using that gun depression. Man, I love this tank so much. It is one of the best tier 9s. I really recommend this, and especially getting to the 705A. All right, next up we have the 752. The French-Russian combo tank. This thing's also got a 122 millimeter gun. That is not the 752. That is. This thing has a 122 millimeter gun with 390 alpha. It's got an autoloader. It is French. It looks very Frenchy. But then it's also got that weird UFO-shaped hole, which makes it kind of trolly. But its armor is not good. Let me tell you that. It is not the best armor. Actually, it's not the best armor. But when you hold down, when you use your 8 degrees of gun depression, which is really, really good for a Russian heavy tank, this thing can do a lot of good things in battle, especially when you're using that APCR rounds. It's got 0.4 accuracy, not the greatest. Top speed of 40. It's got 1750 health, which is pretty typical. Now I can see that for a autoloader heavy at this tier. And it's got 380 hip view range. I'm going to put this thing in good. It's not, I don't really enjoy playing it. Next up, we have the Object 777. Like we said about the, this is basically a 50 TP, just at Russian. That's all it is. I'm not going to explain. All right, next up we had the, is that the Progetto? I believe that's the Progetto 66. I believe that's Progetto 66. Yes, that's the Progetto 66. This is the Italian auto reloading heavy. This thing has a big old, this is literally the Caro Combattimento, just a heavy tank. It's got a whole lot of armor, but you gotta go hold down in order to use that armor effectively. And even if you over angle this tank in the slightest, like turning wise, it's not good. But once you use this hold down, it is a great tank. Not the greatest DPM, but it's got a 3-shot clip that does 1200 damage in 7 seconds. You got 0.35 accuracy. You're pretty mobile for a heavy tank. Got great health and great view range. It's overall a pretty good tank, so I'm going to put this thing in strong. Next up, we have, what is that? The STI. Literally, it's an STI. It's a joke. It's a joke tank, and that's the joke because it is an STI. Okay, that might not be a very appropriate joke, but it's a stupid tank incarnate. There. Yeah, it's terrible. I don't need to explain. We don't talk about it. STI just can go away. But we have to talk about it because this is my video and I'm talking about it. So STI, we're literally going to go over it. No armor, no DPM, slowest, one of the slowest tanks. It's got terrible DPM, terrible accuracy. It's terrible stock. I mean, it's the worst tank play stock in the game, and it's just you can't have fun in this tank ever. Next up, the STR-VK. This tank is probably one of the better tanks in the game. It's got the Kranvong's Hole, and you got a Centurion 7-1 turret. That's literally all it is. So it's going into Shrunk. Next up, we have, what is that? Is that the... Oh, that's T10. T10 is a little bit better than the STI, but is not as good as, say, the Object 257. It's basically a little bit better of an IS-3. Yeah, we're going to put it in balanced. Actually, no, you know what? I'm going to put it in good. I'm going to put it in good. You can do some fun stuff in it. Next up, we have the T-54E, the T-54 heavy tank. This is a pretty dang good tank, in my opinion. It's got a 120 millimeter gun. It's basically if the M48 120 mil was at tier 9 and the heavy tank, it's actually a really good tank. It's got great armor, really great armor. Besides that giant tumor of a cupola, it's got great gun depression at 10 degrees, 12 degrees actually. Wow. This thing makes it evil. Great pen at 240, and then you got like 330 on the 300 on the heat rounds. It's not fast, and it's got terrible health. But this thing is gonna go into strong. Actually, yeah, it's gonna go strong. Next up, we had the T-54E1, which is it got transferred over from a medium to a heavy tank. But I can't. This tank is just. I'm putting it in meh. This is literally a worse T-57 heavy. Got terrible armor. You have terrible DPM. You got terrible pen at 240. At 248, it's not bad, but you only have 2 ammo types, which makes it feel really lackluster. You only got 35 top speed, 0.38 dispersion, which is not bad, but it's also not great. About 400 V-range, which is alright, so yeah. Next up, we have, what in the name is that? That is the... Is it the TNH? I believe that's the TNH. Yes, that is the TNH TVZ51. This is broken. Literally the VZ55 at tier 9. That's all we have to say. The Type 4 Heavy. Let me see, does this thing have hash rounds now? Because if it does, it's good. Yes, it does have hash rounds now, which I'm going to put this back up into this thing. It's literally the Type 5 at tier 9, just not with all the crazy angles and stuff it has. But it's going to go up into strong. You got 2050 health, which is all right, which is actually pretty good for a tier 9. You got 10 degrees of gun depression over the side because you have that weird bulbous breast thing up here. You got like a chicken breast right there in front of your tank, which obstructs its gun from doing anything really. But over the sides, you got 10 degrees. But this thing, since it does have hash now, it's going into strong. The VK4502B. This is a tragic tank. Actually, it's going to be in sucky. It's not going to be in garbage. It's also a terrible, terrible stock grind. You have the same gun, like I said, as the Tiger II. But this thing has nothing compared to the E75 because it's a rear turreted tank, which just makes it terrible. So it's the E75, just rear turreted and very, very sluggish. The WZ-111 1-4. This is, I'm going to put this thing in good. I don't find it great, but I don't find it bad either. It's the 111 5A just at tier 9 and has a little bit less armor. So yeah. Next tank we got here. How long is this video now? We are at an hour. We're doing all right. This is about as what I wanted. And the final tank we have for tier 9 heavy tanks is, I believe, is that the WZ-114. Yes, it is. This thing's going into garbage. This thing has one of the worst guns in the game at 1600 DPM at tier 9. It's got a great turret, actually. That's what's going to put it in sucky. It's not garbage. I mean, but look at this thing. You got 10 degrees of gun depression, which is all right for a Chinese tank. Actually, you know what? Since it's got that stupid weak spot, no, we're going to keep it sucky. You got really great health. You get the same amount as a Moishen. Terribly slow. You got all right dispersion, though, for a 130mm gun. You don't got good pen. You have great pen, actually, at 266, and then 31 on the heat. 311 on the heat. Got all right view range, but this thing is just going to go into sucky because of the DPM. All right, now this gets us to our tier 9 tank destroyers. Let's get her done. All right, the Foch. Foch is going into broken. You're literally doing what the Foch B does at tier 9. But in a couple less shells, I believe you have 4, but that still makes this thing absolutely great. 50 top speed. It's just the Foch B at tier 9. Next, you have the Contracaro Mark 1 or Contracaro 1 Mark 2. This thing, it's gonna be a good tank. It's got terrible DPM, let me tell you that. Actually, no, it doesn't. This thing is, unlike Blitz, this thing is actually literally the Minotauro at tier 9. So this thing is going into broken. All right. Now we have the Conway. I actually have grown really fondly of the Conway. It has been a very good tank to me. It's got a 5.5-inch gun, which makes it feel absolutely great. It's got really good pen, and then especially when you're using the Hesh rounds on this thing, you got 770 alpha at 200 millimeters of pen. It's basically got the whatchamacallit's gun, the Caliban's gun. Got this turret armor is so troll sometimes, because I mean, you literally can take bounces off of it somehow, some way. It's only got a half turret, but still, somehow, some way, this turret is really, really trolly sometimes. And I can bounce off of it. Especially when you're trying to HE that turret, it can be really hard to pen it sometimes with HE. It's got really good accuracy for how big the gun is. It's pretty mobile for how heavy it is. It's got 1500 health, 380 V range. I'm going to put this thing in strong. It's a strong tank. Next up, the Jagdtiger, broken. Has absolutely one of the greatest guns in the game. It's got a big old 128mm gun with 560 alpha, 276 pen, and it's got 352 on the APCR rounds and 700 alpha on the HE, which you can do a lot with. It's got 2100 health, the best of any tier 9 tank destroyer, I believe. It's actually mobile for how big it is, 0.32 accuracy. Yeah, there's no need to explain why this thing is broken. It's got, look at its DPM, 3,000. And just putting, let's see, let's put Brothers in Arms on this thing. Let's put on Bounty, let's put on improved innovative loader system. Let's put improved vents on, like venting system. Let's put a venting system on it. And then let's also put, you know what we could also do to it? We're going to put on, Watch this. We're going to make this thing absolutely cracked. Watch, we're going to put on a whole, let's look at that, 2,370 health now. And also you can put on a equipment, you can put on directives here. We're going to put on another gun rammer for this thing. We're going to put on food. Okay, what are these new things? Oh, these are, okay, here. So we're going to put on food on this thing, put engine on it. We're also going to put on a, let's put on Fury. That actually bumped up the DPM too. Then we're going to put on Brothers in Arms. Now watch this. We're going to put on this. We're going to improve its DPM, I think. Yeah, look at that. You can get up to 4,175 DPM on this thing. That is insane. Insanity, guys. I mean, look at that. And then you also can get up to, look at, it's just insane. It's broken. There's no need to explain. The K91 PT. This is literally the K91 if it was a tank destroyer. It's not good. It's not a good tank, guys. It really isn't. Yeah, it might look like it has good DPM. It's got decent pen, but actually, no. This thing actually is. I'm thinking back to the K91, but the only thing wrong with this thing is it's got no armor. It's got a great gun. It's basically It's basically the 268 version 4 at tier 9, just with a little bit worse frontal armor. I'm gonna put this thing in good. Next up, we have a brand new tank. This is a German siege mode, the Kampfpanzer III Project 7 HK. This thing is funny. I mean, look at this thing. It's literally a Stridsvagn. You can see the Swedish inspiration out of this thing. But once you put this thing in siege mode, this is a funny tank. I mean, look at that. Let's put this thing in live. I mean, look at that. You got a funny. It's literally the Stridsvagn at tier 9, and it's just German. But you also got to watch out because this thing is easy to pen, and you can even HE that. So really watch out for that thing. It's got great pen all around. Got great DPM at 3,218. Really quick tank destroyer. 65 top speed. But its health is pretty lackluster, actually. Actually, no, never mind. It's not pretty lackluster. The viewing range, though, and also the accuracy is all right. But this thing, I feel like this thing is going to be pretty strong, not going to lie. Next, we have the Object 263, which is literally the tier 10, now at tier 9. But they nerfed the heck out of it, I believe. Yeah, now they nerfed it. In all honesty, it's got 550 alpha, 270 pen. It's just not as good as it once was at tier 10, but it's still really good performing tank. Just put that thing back at tier 10, please. It just makes everyone happy. Now we got the Object 704. This thing is an absolute joy to play because you got the BL-10 gun. This thing has absolutely crazy armor. Sometimes you can do this. Thing is trolley armor, especially off these upper plates and stuff. But it doesn't look too good. That's because you're shooting a BL-10 at it, because that's 286 millimeters of standard pen, and you have 329 with the APCR. It used to be up to 370, I believe, but they had to nerf that because obviously reasons. It's pretty accurate for the big old gun. It's pretty mobile. I wouldn't say it's very great with horsepower per ton because of how thick it is, but it's going to go up into strong as well. The Stridsvagn, literally the Stridsvagn at tier 9. So I'm going to put this thing in broken. The SU-122-54. This thing used to have the best gun in the game, in my opinion, tier for tier, because of how good it used to be the M62. It used to have so much pen and stuff, but now that it doesn't have the M62 gun, it's just meh now. So it's fast. It's got a pretty decent gun still, but it's nothing compared to what it once was. Next, we have the T-30. Oh, this tank. I love the T-30. You literally have the T-29 or the T-34 just with 150 155 millimeter gun. Amazing pen on this thing at 290, I believe ish, around 290, 276, close enough. 320 on the APCR. It's not quick, but it's not bad. But it's got amazing armor, one of the thickest turrets in the game. It's impenetrable from the front, even if you're shooting heat rounds at it. Because, I mean, it's just got spaced upon spaced upon spaced layers. And, yeah. Now, the Doom Turtle. Ready, fight! Bam! Put the Metal Gear Solid or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. Metal Gear Solid 3 intro remix. This thing is one of the most OG of OG tanks. It's just so slow. It's so slow. This isn't moving across the map. Hello, T95. This isn't moving across the map. Even if with a boost, you cannot get to your top speed. It's got amazing armor, amazing gun. Everything about it's good. I'm going to put it in good. It's so slow. Next, we have another newer tank. We have the TL7. This thing is actually a turreted auto-loading tank destroyer for America. Believe it or not, it's got a funny looking. This thing is funny looking. Let me just tell you, it almost looks like the Astron Rex, just in a tank destroyer form, and at tier 9. And it almost looks like a WZ 132 1-1 with those side skirts and stuff. This thing is really quick at 50 kilometers an hour. It's also quite small, believe it or not. It's got great gun. It's got 252 pen. You have 1440 potential damage with your 4-shot gun. You have 1500 health. You got a very fun gun. I love fun armor because of the spaced armor. Got 10 degrees of gun depression with this thing, but it's not the greatest armor. But then again, it's pretty trolly. So I'm gonna put this thing in. Let's put it in good. Next up, you have the Tortoise. The Tortoise is literally the Badger at tier 9, just with a little bit less armor, but it's going to be in strong. Now, the Waffentrager. The Waffle, this thing is also going to go in strong. It's got basically the same gun. You could have the 150 gun, it could have a 150 millimeter gun, or it could also have the same gun as the Jagdtiger, just a little bit worse. But it has no armor, but it doesn't really care because of how good the gun is. So it's going to go there. Now we have the WZ120 GFT. This is only on the Asia server, I believe, unless they have sold it anywhere else otherwise. But this thing, it's literally the WZ120-1 GFT at tier 9, but with a bigger gun, and it's a whole lot better. So that's going to be at tier 9. It's going to be in strong. Next, we have the WZ111 GFT. Literally, it's the WZ113 GFT at tier 9. Easy. No need to say anything about it. Next, we have the AMX 1390. This thing's going to go straight into meh. It's just not good. It's a French tank. It's the AMX 105 with a 90 millimeter gun, and at tier 9, so it's meh. All right, now the Char MLE 75. This thing is a pay-to-win machine. And this thing has a 6-shot autoloader with 3-shot bursts at a 100 millimeter gun, so you have the potential of doing 1200. And then if you use the HE on this thing actually works for some reason. You have 2,200 damage. And this thing also has turbo mode. You can go up to 75 kilometers an hour in this tank. And it plays like a wheeled light tank. So this thing, obviously, is going to go straight up into broken. And as is the EBR-90, because it's a wheeled light tank. It's also broken. Now we have the G-SOAR. I believe this is the G-SOAR. Yep, the G-SOAR 3301 AVR-FS. This is poop. This is a poopy tank. It has a very, very bad gun. It's got decent pen, but it's literally just the Manticore at tier 9, and it looks like a Spaz Panzer 1C. Next, we have the RU-251. This tank, I love this tank. It is going to go into strong because of how good the gun is. Actually, that was not the RU. My bad. That's the RU. RU is literally, it's a better, in my opinion, it's a better Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, because you got a really good, it's like really good. It might not look like it has good DPM, but in reality it does. It was used to be the fastest tank in the game. It's got amazing APCR and heat rounds, and then its HE rounds actually have 102 millimeters of pen, which is really unique. You also have some of the best horsepower per ton in the game. Great view range, great accuracy, especially on the move. This tank is absolutely strong. Next up, we have the T-54 Lightweight. This is literally the T-54 as a light, so it's going to go into shrunk. Next up, we have the T-49. Now, here's where it gets controversial. Yes, you had the good 90mm gun, but I love the derp gun, but this thing, since the HE nerf, you can't play the derp gun anymore, and the derp gun used to be the better gun, but now that you can't really use it, there's no reason to play it, really, even. And then last but not least, we have the WZ-132A, I believe, yes. This thing is literally it's literally the tier 10 at tier 9, just with a 100mm gun. It's literally, yeah, exactly that. That's gonna go into good. I don't find it very fun to play, but it can do good games. So there you have it. There's the tier 9 tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next video, my friends, is going to be probably around 3 hours long, because we have to go through the tier 8. And as you can tell, there's over 200 tier 8s. So that is going to be fun. I don't know if we're going to be able to fit them all on here unless we make them very, very tiny. But I hope you guys enjoy this video. Comment down below what you think about this. As you know, it's my opinion. Please be nice about it. And I will see you guys for tier 8. Until next time, take care.